Hey everybody, Jim Willis from Willis Outdoors here. One thing I've been really getting into the past decade or so is doing my own European mounts. And I had a couple of friends, well, my nephew and another friend of mine that asked me to do Euro mounts on their buck skulls on uh, one friend of mine's son's first deer. And this is my nephew's first buck. So I'm doing these up for them, and I thought I'd take a couple of minutes to actually show you how I go about doing it. So I got these couple of buck skulls. I'm going to be showing you this one here. First thing I want to do is take all the hide off of the skull. Now it can be kind of tedious, and I know there's some people that are probably really good at this. I'm not one of them. So I can actually skip this process on the video, and I'll come back. I'll have this hide all cleaned off of the skull, and I will be ready to actually start doing our European mounts. So this is how I do it. There's lots of ways. This is my boiling method. So stick around, check it out. This is how we do it. Okay, now that I got them pretty much all the hide taken off, it's just the bone, it's just the muscle. If it's not perfect, don't worry about it. You just kind of want to get it as good as you can. And like I said, the reason I skipped it is because I know there's a lot of people that are a lot better at me at doing this. I wasn't saving the hide for taxidermy or anything else, so however you can find to get it off. So you're not going to be saving the hide anyway. So the next step we want to do is take this over to our boil. So you're going to want to find a stock pot that's going to be big enough that you can fit your complete skull submerged flat laying down in the bottom of it. I can't remember how big this is, but I got this a while ago. And you're going to also, if you're going to do this, pick a designated pot for it. Don't use your wife's cookware. She's going to get pissed. So, what I got in this pot, fill it up with water. It's going to be, you want enough water to cover the skull, but not the antlers. Then add a bunch of salt, depending on how big your pot is. You know, I usually dump in at least a few pounds of it. I've already got some in there, but the more the merrier. I'll take a 3-pound box and I'll dump it in there, no worries. The more the merrier on it. And then the other ingredients I put in there is borax. Now borax is a degreaser, and well, it's sold as like a laundry additive, but it really helps to suck all the fat and everything else, break that stuff down. So I'll throw a few cups of that in there. Not an exact science. Make sure you got a bunch. I usually use, personally, about a third of one of these boxes. If you do too much, don't worry about it. It's better than having not enough. So, then I'm going to take my skull and I'm going to slowly drop it in there. Now this pot is wide enough to fit most racks. As you can see, I don't have quite enough water in there because I want it to cover the skull right up to the base of the antlers right there. I don't really want to submerge the antlers, but I want to get as much of the skull under the water as I possibly can. So I'm going to add a little bit more water to it. All right, so I'm just going to add some hot water. A little bit more. Okay, I'm right at that point. If you see, I'm just right at the base of the antlers there. Now, if you go a little bit over and you do cover the antlers a bit, what it might do is cause a little bit of discoloration. It'll really wash out its natural color that's been rubbed in by the trees and all that. And it might cause a little bit of softening of the antlers at that point, but it's usually not a problem. But you're going to want to keep a watch on your water levels to make sure you keep it up to that point, because you're boiling water, so it's going to boil off. You're going to lose it a little bit. Check back on it every so often and top off a little water. Now I'm going to want to boil this in this solution for, depending on the skull, it's usually about 5 hours or so, so it'll more than likely be dark when I finish up with doing this. But we're going to check back on it from time to time. I'm going to just throw a cover on it here just a little bit. And I'm just going to leave it hang out. I'm going to keep an eye on it for the day and show you what it's like when we're done with this stage and we're on to the next. So every now and then you're going to want to crack your pot open here. Lift it up, let it drain out, submerge it, let it bubble all back through. Lift it up, let it all pour out. That'll help kind of loosen up some of the inside. And you can go around and scrape off some of this flesh, some of the meat that's still stuck on there, to kind of help speed the process up a bit. If you know, like you're cooking a big pot of stew with a big soup bone, how it starts slowly after a while, it works up and falls off the bone. That's what we're aiming for here. That's why it's going to take quite a while of sitting and boiling this down to actually get all of it out. We got to make sure to get in and get all the insides out. So put it on there. It's still going to take a couple hours, so check back for more. Well, we're sitting about 4.5 hours into it at the moment. And the one thing that'll show you that it's really going to start happening quick and it's all going to fall off is you lose that bottom jawbone. So when you lose the bottom jawbone, it starts loosening up all the meat that's inside of it, and all opens up the whole inner skull cavity when that happens. So shouldn't have too much longer. So what I'm going to do is every so often I'm going to pull it out, working all these little holes and crevices with my knife, just try and loosen up a lot of that meat that's in there and is being just kind of held on because it's up inside the skull. So this has still got a while yet. Set it, and I'm gonna come back in a little bit and check on it again, do the same thing. Okay, so it's been actually going for quite a while now. It's kind of cold out, so it took a little bit longer because I wasn't able to keep that rolling boil, so it didn't quite cook down as long. So this one took a little extra time, but I'm pretty sure I've got the majority of it out. Now, after working through quite a bit, giving gentle scrapes, see I've got most of everything is cooked inside and out. I don't see much for any brain material in there, but I'm just going to take it and rinse it through a little bit here. Alright, set that off to the side. And then what I'm going to want to do is I need to fish through here and find out where my lower jaw bones went to. Alright, there's one. Where's the other one? And there's the other lower jawbone. So I'm going to have to clean those up a little bit. So I am going to take this inside my house. I'm going to do a little bit of extra fine detail cleaning on it. Then I'm going to let it cool down. And tomorrow I'll let this cool down overnight till tomorrow. And we'll go through with the next step, which is going to be whitening, making this a brilliant white color instead of the dingy gray color that it is. So onward till tomorrow for the next step. When you first take it out of the pot, what you're going to notice is that the bones are really soft. They're really, really fragile. So you definitely want to be careful so you don't lose, no, you don't lose much bone. Like with this boil method, you'll notice that you do lose some bone through the sinus cavity that you wouldn't lose if you're using the beetle method. But unfortunately for me, I don't have a suitable place to use the beetle method, which is pretty much putting this in a tote and putting these flesh-eating beetles in there, and they'll clean off the skull. It doesn't take very long, and actually you get a better quality with it because you don't lose any bone, you just lose the flesh. But it is what it is. So this is why I do the method that I do. Now the jaw bones, you're also going to want to be really, really careful with, because these teeth, once all the flesh is off them, there's nothing really holding them in there. So you want to save this, because this really is the true trophy to any deer, is that lower jawbone, because it'll tell you how old the deer is. Now these little teeth on the end here are way fragile. They're really, really loose. Every now and then when I do this, I do lose teeth from time to time, especially those little ones. It's so hard, but that's why you got to be extremely careful when handling it especially when it's still warm. So I've got the skull in here, and one thing I have found to make it pretty easy, or at least help me out a little bit, is when I get all the flesh scraped off that I can reach, everything's out of the cranial cavity. But I kind of love this stuff. Dawn Power Wash. Because, you know, Dawn dish soap, it cuts through grease and all that, and all the leftover grease. And this thing makes it so easy with that spray pump. I'll take that Dawn Power Wash and just squirt it in all the little nooks and crannies. All over, inside. This stuff really can get right into the sinus cavity. And I'll just let that sit on there for a few minutes. I'll do that to the lower jaw bones too. Remember to be very gentle. And then I'm actually going to leave that sit and leave it bubble and leave it kind of work up some of the just the grease and the oils that are stuck to the skull. And then I'm going to go through and rinse it off. I'll just let it sit on there for 5-10 minutes or so. Okay, and now I've had it sitting on here foaming away with that Dawn Power Wash for about 10 minutes or so. Now we're going to go through and rinse it off. So I'm going to take hot water and just gently spray it off. There's one of my jaws. Remember to be careful when you're doing this to make sure you're not gonna rub anything off. I just lost a tooth. And if that ever happens, a lot of the times you can take that tooth and just put it right back in. Sometimes it'll go, sometimes it won't. This one's not going to. See, sometimes that'll happen. Like I said, you got to be really, really gentle with these teeth. Sometimes you lose them. It happens. I don't want to force it back into there because you don't want to break it anymore. Like I said, these are soft. Sorry, Braden, but you're missing a tooth. Okay, so I'm just going to go through and just give it a general rinsing. What I'm trying to look for is if I got any other spots of flesh that might be stuck to it that's going to cause an issue. You definitely don't want to have any flesh left on it at all, because that can cause problems down the road. I mean, it's meat, and if you don't get it all out, then it can start to rot. Need to make sure it's clean. Make sure to get in all those little pores, little nooks and crannies. Rinse out all that that dish soap sprayed into there. Making sure to get into the brain cavity, in through the sinus cavity, just to make sure you can get out as much as you can. If you're going to scrape light, so let's scrape gentle, that way you don't lose any bone. So now, all I got to do is make sure this is all dried out. I'm going to leave it sit overnight. When it dries out, it's going to start to harden up some of the softer bone. It'll be a little better. And then we can go on to the bleaching stage, which isn't too hard and involves something we normally have around anyway. Just a lot of it. So, alright. Just give me till tomorrow. Let this thing dry, and I'll show you how to bleach it up. Make it look all pretty. Okay, so it's been about, well, not quite 24 hours. I got this boiled up last night. It's the next day. So I want to take you on to the next step. This is how I go about bleaching my skulls. So what I got here, I got the skull. That's all good and cleaned off as best you can anyways. And of course, got the lower jaw bones. Now I let these dry overnight and cool. These are no longer really soft bones, so they're back to hard bone. So I got a container. This container is going to be just deep enough to fit your skull. So you're gonna want to put your skull right into there. Now let's see how that just enough to fit it. Put my lower jaw bones into it. And now for bleaching, I know you can go out and get all those expensive skull bleaching kits. You paint the outside of it, it gets all white. But what I do is I use this to bleach it. Anyone live from the 80s and 90s knows hydrogen peroxide bleaches stuff. God knows I had my hair done up enough. So you want to pick up enough hydrogen peroxide to submerge the skull into it. Now that all depends on the size of your container, of course, that you're using, but I'll just take this hydrogen peroxide, just straight up, and I'll just dump it into the container. I try and go right over the skull, but it doesn't really matter. Now for me with this container, doing my skulls, it usually takes about 8 of these bottles, but you figure 8 of these bottles only cost me $8. How much is a skull bleaching kit? This is a lot cheaper, and really the way I look at it is the hydrogen peroxide is actually soaking into all the pores, going through the inside of the skull, all the little nooks and crannies inside of the skull that you're not hitting with your bleaching kit. So it's totally disinfecting your skull inside and out, along with actually bleaching and whitening it. Okay, when I start getting up close to the top of the skull here, because I don't want to get the hydrogen peroxide to go past the antlers, because that'll start bleaching out the color of the antlers as well. So I'll get it up pretty much as high as I can. And then I'll take this paper towel and I like to lay it right into there. And this will actually wick. So you get the hydrogen peroxide will absorb and get pulled up this paper towel, and it'll hold it against the skull there. That way you're not worried about getting the peroxide into your antlers and bleaching it. Just like that. Now that's going to soak up like that. And now that I've got it filled up with the peroxide, I've got it covered with the paper towel there on the spots that the peroxide didn't fill up to. I'm going to leave it sit and soak in this for about 24 hours, maybe a little bit more. And by the time I come back, it'll be bleached inside and out, and it'll be bright white. The thing I like about this method of bleaching as compared to the harsh chemicals that you can buy in the store, the skull bleaching kits, is you can hit every little nook and cranny, all inside of the brain cavity. It'll be nicely bleached out, disinfected. Through the sinus cavity, it will be all bleached out, disinfected, and you're not going to have to worry about anything that might be left over that you couldn't quite get into. All those little spots that you can't really get into, this will help at least to disinfect it, kill off anything that's in there, and so now we sit back and wait. You can actually already see that it's starting to whiten up some of the bones, and it's already only been in there for a little bit, but. All right, so it's been about, I don't know, it's about 24 hours that it's been soaking in this hydrogen peroxide, and she's going to be good to go. I haven't looked at it yet, but every time I do, it's good. So what I'm going to want to do first is just pull off this paper towel that I had soaking over the skull. I'll just set that off to the side and take it out. Now, just like when I boiled it, it's going to be a little bit on the softer side. So you're going to want to let it dry and get it hardened up. But I'll take that out. And I got the lower jaws in here too. See that whitened up everything. Nice, bright, clean, crisp. Turned out great. And like I had said, with the boil method, you're going to lose a little bit into the sinus cavity, which this did. It opened up a little bit, chipped it off a little bit, but otherwise, this skull came out great. So I'm going to set that down. I'm going to let it sit, and I'm not really going to handle it for, till at least tomorrow, because I really want it to dry out completely and re-harden up into bone. Because it's not as pliable as when you boil it when it first came out, but it's been rehydrated. It's not as strong as it should be. So sit there, let it dry. Braden, hope you like how it turned out. Hope this helps you out. For doing your own European mounts, it's a lot easier than you really think to do it. I mean, yeah, it took me a couple of days, but okay, one day is just sitting around watching a pot boil. How hard is that? It's really not that hard. It's not that difficult. So give it a try. Check it out. I've been doing all mine like this. I just love doing it. It's fun as hell. So, yeah, enjoy. Hopefully you enjoyed it. See you in the woods.